Wilson is an author and the founder of God's Active People, an outreach ministry committed to providing need-based projects such as the Loretta Johnson Global Abstinence Project. Kim says abstinence is a matter of life or death in certain communities, and she joins us today with practical ways to avoid premarital sex. Welcome to the Harvest Show.
Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate it.
So glad you made it all the way. You and your family traveled. You drove in from Atlanta, Georgia?
Atlanta, yeah.
But you're from this local area.
Well, actually, I went to Indiana University in Bloomington School of Business, yeah. I won't tell you what year I graduated, though.
Okay, so we'll let you keep that a secret.
Absolutely.
I want to get to that statement there. It's a huge statement that you're making, yes. That abstinence is a matter of life or death. We definitely know that due to certain diseases, you know, you can contract a disease.
Right.
But, you know, when I was in college, everybody was having premarital sex because they knew a pill would handle that. But you say it's a matter of life or death.
Absolutely.
In specific communities.
Absolutely.
Why
well,
is that?
I've started what's called the Loretta Johnson Global Abstinence Project. And that's the name of my late mother, Loretta Johnson, and who was a very godly woman. And she had a real heart for helping single women, mothers, girls, and so forth, as far as overcoming obstacles regarding premarital sex. And she really focused against that. And so I've kind of taken on that legacy, so to speak, and started this particular project. But we are focused on helping specifically Black and Hispanic women and promoting abstinence to that group, which unfortunately is not promoted nearly enough, especially by Christian churches and ministries. And it is a life or death situation, Valerie, because the statistics show that 70% of Black women have the new cases, actually are new cases of HIV.
Wow.
So that means that every 70 out of 100 women, if that's the case, or I'm sorry, HIV cases, is 70 Black women. So
that's huge.
It's really huge. And as far as that's concerned, also 72% of Black children are born outside of wedlock. And typically they're in homes with the mother only. So if the mothers begin to die from HIV at the rates that they are, then it leads to a horrible future for our kids. And they end up with no one who really wants to take care of them, and without a father and without a home. As far as Hispanic women are concerned, typically about 50% of their children are born outside of wedlock and in single parent homes as well. And about 20% of them actually represent the new cases of HIV and AIDS.
New HIV and AIDS. Why do you think that there's such a prevalence in the Black and Hispanic communities for that? I mean, those are pretty severe statistics when you think
really is.
70% of all new AIDS cases are Black females.
It really is, Stephen. I tell you what's interesting about it is that Blacks and Hispanics are the most religious ethnic groups in the United States. And over 84% of them say that they're Christians, committed Christians. In fact, in the Black community, 79% of Blacks say that they find religion to be very important in their lives. And whereas only 56% of Americans in the U.S. actually say that religion is important to them. However, when it comes to premarital sex or having kids out of wedlock, they don't seem to practice their Christian values. And I think they need to be reminded, and that needs to be taught and really emphasized that premarital sex is wrong, it's a sin. And I don't think many of them think that anymore, or they just don't care.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to know. Where does that disconnect come in? Because you can't go to the church that I attend for longer than 2 weeks, Stephen, before you hear that premarital sex is wrong. You're going to hear that message, but churches are. What are you saying? Do you feel like churches are dropping the ball in this issue, or they're leaving it up to the parents or the streets or culture to teach about this?
Absolutely. I think what it is, and I actually, when I started this, I did a workshop, and that's how the book was based and so forth. And I went around to different churches, youth groups, women's organizations and so forth, and did the workshop, as well as the workshop is also being conducted internationally on 3 continents and about 20 other countries. But what I found in speaking with youth leaders, pastors, and so forth, is that in those communities, they really don't have the resources. The communication resources, really, the books and so forth, to really give out, to promote whether that's in Bible studies or youth group meetings, or just giving it out individually, you know, to Black and Hispanic women that can really relate to them. And that's why the Loretta Johnson Project, Abstinence Project, we focus on helping in that way and providing those resources for Christian churches and ministries, because it's different. You know, typically when you're dealing with single moms that are Black and Hispanic, or girls that are having kids out of wedlock, they're typically at a poverty level, and the education level is not as high. So some of the resources are not applicable that would be, say, in mainstream America, where abstinence is promoted, say with purity rings or different galas, you know, balls and so forth that they have. Well, that's not really applicable in Black and Hispanic areas. So we really need the church to promote it in a different way. And so that's our goal, is to help them make that easier.
Now, when it comes to kind of changing the environment, the culture, so to speak, having a message in church or hearing something from the pulpit, or even going light years beyond that and doing a coordinated strategic program to bring education and really a sense of accomplishment and pride in purity. Outside of that, the streets and the culture around urbanized areas are pretty intense and kind of try to claw and take away all of the positivity there. Does your foundation, or are there groups that are kind of reaching out beyond the church to see this message kind of brought to a community at large through other avenues, other voices?
Absolutely. We started out providing our resources for churches and ministries, but now we're getting calls from different community groups, different groups that focus on youth, Black and Hispanic women and girls and so forth. And they're actually going out. Even individuals are requesting it. I actually had one lady, which was interesting. She was going to a party, you know, a Tupperware party or something, and it was going to be mostly single women there. And she was saying what a high rate of unwed or out of wedlock births were in her community. And she called and actually asked for some of the books. She said she wanted to give them out and actually promote them there. So in different women's groups, singles groups and so forth. But also talking about going out into the community, one of the things we stress and we ask churches and ministries is to do door-to-door outreach ministry. Take these resources, because it's designed to where it's very quick to read, very easy to follow. And we wanted it that way because of the ethnic groups and so forth, and different education levels and reading levels that we're focusing on. And so that way it will be real easy for them to understand.
Yeah,
I was just about to say, we're going to talk more about your efforts to reach those communities and the Abstinence Handbook when Harvest continues in just a moment. And we are back with author Kim Wilson of the Loretta Johnson Global Abstinence Project. And just before we went to break, we were talking about your efforts to reach the community, different communities around the country with the Abstinence Handbook for women and girls throughout the world, experiencing God's best for your life by avoiding premarital sex. I'm a single person. I practice abstinence. You know, and it's an ongoing effort for me to walk this path of holiness, because basically at the end of the day, I believe it's a decision that comes down to how do you feel about God and what He has said about your word, and if you believe Him, then you'll obey that. But that message is not getting out, so you are actually going from door to door. But you're not in the schools, public schools. Why?
That is because we are Christian-based. And the book is Christian-based, and we want to keep it that way. And many public schools, as you know, organizations do not want that. So that's why we want to go through churches and ministries to get it out there. And they obviously are more motivated to do so and accepting of the way that it's based. Because I believe that the strength in order to practice abstinence, especially in our society, as well as international countries that we work with as well, is based on your strength in Jesus.
But it's an old-fashioned message. It's impossible for the congressman once said, I can't recall his name, I wish I could, that it's impossible for American teenagers to abstain. What say you?
No, not at all. They just have to have the right motivation. They have to be taught by their parents, by the churches, the ministries, and so forth, and given resources like we provide to actually not just tell them why. It is wrong in the Bible based on what God says, and it's a sin that can lead to hell based on Galatians 5 and Revelations 21, which they need to know. But they also need to know how, and that's what our book does. We really focus on telling them how to implement what we call successfully and effective proven ways to live a life to avoid having sex before marriage. And it is very real, it's very possible to do, but most people don't know, and quite a few don't. And unfortunately, our young people, they don't seem to know that it's wrong in many cases, so they have to be taught that as well.
So share a few of those hows, those ways.
Those hows, basically, we talk about what true love is. That's extremely important. Many have no idea, and true love is based on God's definition of true love. In 1 Corinthians 13, love is patient, it's kind, it's not rude, it's not selfish, things like that. So we talk about, well, this is what you need to look for when you're looking for in the guys that you're dating, the men that you're marrying, things like that. To really know what true love is. Many have no idea. They think, because they get butterflies or what have you, or hold hands, and that the guy truly loves them. But that's not the case. So really many of them have no idea what that is. So we focus on that a great deal. We also talk about your goals and the consequences. There are huge consequences that you run into and problems you have to deal with by having sex before marriage. The unwanted pregnancies, HIV and AIDS, really limiting your future because all of a sudden you have a child to take care of that you can't afford. And that really limits your future as far as education and so forth, which you end up going into low-paying jobs, which leads to poverty and not being able to take care of your kids the way that they should be and being able to give them the best. The other thing we talk about in the book, and this one is somewhat controversial, but I definitely believe in it, is stop blaming the men, Women often do that, and they say, oh, it was his fault. No, as I was brought up by my grandmother, she says, Kim, it's your responsibility to keep your legs crossed, not his, okay? So in the beginning, it really is the woman's fault, not the man. Now afterwards, he should pay for the child, and support the child or whatever. But I believe it's the women's responsibility. And also the women have to really look for the men, the good of the man, and help them not to want to have sex before marriage so they too can experience God's best in their lives and build good futures for themselves. And also the part of women really tempting men in many cases and boys to have sex before marriage. So that is something we focus on too that's very unique, is to stop blaming the men. We also talk about why real men wait, and real important for that too, for them too to be able to build good stable careers and families and be able to experience the best in their lives.
Now, the title is Abstinence Handbook for Women and Girls Throughout the World. We've talked a lot about the U.S. and the stats. So what are some of the things that are going on outside the U.S. that you're addressing and your experiences there?
Well, it's interesting. It's taken off like wildfire really outside of the United States or internationally as well as it has within the United States. And that is the case that we're working with about 200 churches and ministries and pastors that are overseas, mostly in Africa and Asia, and over about 20 different countries. And we're reaching probably about 10,000 women and girls per month with the information from the Abstinence Workbook or Abstinence Handbook. But they actually go and have Bible studies, youth group meetings, and so forth with women and girls, and share this information with them to promote it. And the statistics there are alarming too. And especially in sub-Saharan African countries, it's like 57% of women and girls have HIV and AIDS.
Yes, of course.
And there's a whole generation of kids that are orphans now because so many of adults have died because of HIV and AIDS that it's not enough adults left to raise the kids, which is a major issue. And extreme poverty, kids on the street, a lot of crime, prostitution, things like that.
Well, Kim, we have about 30 seconds left. Tell us about the giveaway, the free giveaway. Are you giving away the Abstinence Handbook?
Absolutely. What we want to do specifically for those who are watching the Harvest Show today is we're going to be giving away a certain number of the Abstinence Handbook, and we have it in paperback as well as audiobook CD. So we'll be giving away up to about 5 per churches. For those who watch the show and can actually go to the website and request the books. And we also, want to make sure that they are giving them to the members in their churches and so forth. But it can also be used as a Bible study tool as well.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
And your mission to share the message of abstinence with churches and people around the world. To connect with Kim or to get your free copy of the Abstinence Handbook, go to gapglobal.net. That's gapglobal.net. And if you can't remember that, you can log on to harvest-tv.com for a link to her project, the Abstinence Handbook. And still to come, Daddy expert G.A.P. explains how dads can make memories with their kids that will last a lifetime. But up next, Pastor Charles joins us with today's devotion. Stay with us.